So I'm going to close the source code for now. And what I want to do is I'm going to type Python code injector.py, and of course I need a process ID. So let's go ahead and use our trusty calculator. And I bring up Task Manager, and the calculator has a process ID of 2340. So I'm going to type that twice in here, 2340, 2340. And you can see that it executed properly. So what exactly happened was that our shell code got injected into the existing process of calculator, and then we saw that padding done to basically then kill the process, and the kill was done later in the program. Now we're going to take that same code, but we're going to modify it a little bit so that we can better see the shell code execution as well as what's being done inside of the assembly code and our registers. So let's go ahead and open our source again. Okay, so now this is the second half of the same shell code writing section. In the second half of the demo, we basically are going to modify the original script just slightly to add a breakpoint so that we can see where our shell code is inside of memory through Immunity Debugger. So let's take a look at the source code and look at the changes that I've done. I left everything at the top untouched. I left the shell code untouched. Now I did add the basically declaration of a buffer. I've created an interrupt here. This is an interrupt 3, so this is going to be our breakpoint. Then what I did is I took that shell code and I added that to the buffer. And then the only other change that I made is down at this line here, kernel 32 write process memory. So when it actually gets executed, instead of just the shell code, I want it to execute my buffer as well. That will give us the breakpoint. So those are the only changes that I made, and I made a little note here so that I know that this is the new code that I'm running. And of course I changed the name of the script to code injector mod, just so that a mental note that this is a modification of the original. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize my code. I'm going to bring up the calculator process. So now I'll bring up the task manager. My PID is 2568. Python code injector mod py 2568. 2568. Now, we don't want to hit enter yet because we want to go ahead and attach to the calculator process as it's running right now. So let's do that through Immunity. You're going to bring up Immunity, select File, Attach. Go ahead and sort by the names of the processes. You're going to look for the calculator, and you can see it says 2568. There's a button here to attach. Now what this does is it shows us the calculator program and of course the disassembled so we can see it in assembly language. Now this is actually a breakpoint that the debugger provides to us just to allow us to see the code disassembled, but we're actually going to now call our particular breakpoint in our Python script. So bring up your command prompt again where you have your Python script ready to execute. Go ahead and hit enter, and you're going to select the play button in your debugger. And what that does is it actually stopped at our int3. You can see at the bottom the status int3 command. If you scroll up just a little bit, you can actually see the CC, that was our interrupt, and the int3, the interruption. This is an interruption to the execution of the process. That means the very next line is the beginning of our shellcode. And we could actually look at this in the hex dump as well. So select follow in dump selection. And what you'll see here is this is all of our shellcode. Now if I back up just a little bit, I can actually see the interrupt. So there's the CC, and then the first opcode of our shellcode is FC, so FC813. So if we bring up the source code again, we can match it right up to our shellcode. So there's FC8440000, etc. And it goes all the way down to there are 4 letter A's, so 41 in ASCII is the letter A, and then we have the XX00. So, and if we look down here in the hex dump, we can see that 41, 41, 41, 41, which of course is shown in ASCII in this column, so we've got our 4 A's. So that's the end of the shellcode. So hopefully this was helpful to be able to show you actually the injection of the shellcode into a running process. Now, right now it's interrupted, so what we'll do is we'll continue to play, and it should go ahead and terminate the calculator process. So if you look at the bottom, you can see that the thread was indeed terminated. Now, you might be wondering though, why do I still have a calculator here? Well, that's because the immunity is kind of holding that up. So once I close immunity, that calculator process will then completely terminate. And so you can see that it's no longer there, and it's no longer in our list of PIDs. Now, I have to talk about the jump EAX, call EAX technique, because these are basically assembly code commands that are very common for the purpose of transferring control. So transferring control from one function to a completely different function. Now there are ways that you can look up common DLLs that are loaded in an executable and basically find where jump EAX or call EAX commands are done. Once you get that memory location, you could then substitute in essence, or create a buffer where you could have your shellcode get called for that jump EAX or call EAX command. And so that's a common technique that's used in order for attackers to get command prompts, and that's usually, of course, targeted against some victim machine and exploited through the shellcode injection. Now, I'm only mentioning it here because I don't have the time in this talk to go through how to actually do that. If I create an intermediate version of this course, I would go more into those details. So for the final demo, this is going to be the ultimate exploit, where we basically exploit a process on a victim machine, and then we open a command on our attacker machine where we have access to the terminal that's actually on the victim machine. Okay, so this is the last part that we're going to show, which is a demo of a full exploit to provide command and control at a prompt from an attacker machine with a connection to the victim machine. Now, we're actually going to use some software from exploitdb.com, This is a product called Blaze DVD Pro Player, and it has a stack-based buffer overflow. If you go to exploitdb.com, you can see that the author who found this basically describes the platform where he tested this, and also provides a very nice script in Perl, and also explains where he does the jump ESB, and we had spoken about that technique. So many thanks to Vivek for the information that Vivek provided in Pen Tester Academy on this particular exploit. So what you can do is you can actually exploit the vulnerable app, which I see is now NA, so I'm sure it must be available somewhere. Luckily I have the executable already, so I can go ahead and install it, but I'm sure if you Google for it, you'd be able to find it somewhere. Just make sure you check the checksum. So what I've done is I've installed it inside of my Windows XP VirtualBox, and so after you install it, go ahead and click Trial, and we are actually going to be loading up an exploit, and we'll just quickly take a look at the code. The code's pretty simple. It's based upon the script that you saw that the gentleman posted on exploitdb.com. We're basically going to be creating a playlist file, and in that playlist file we're going to have some shellcode which is going to produce the buffer overflow. So all that this Python script does is basically create that play file, and so that's what I'm going to be loading in here now. So open this file, select the playlist, and as you can see it's still in a running state, which is good. So then we go to our attacker machine, and we're going to use netcat. So this is the IP address of my victim machine. Netcat listens on 4444, and as you can see I get a prompt. So I am now on the Windows machine. So that is a full exploit and the last demo that we have to show today, and realize it's basically a culmination of all the techniques and theory that we looked at in this video series. Now, defenses and countermeasures. Basically, what can you do if you're on the other side of this? If you're not on the offensive side, but you're on the defensive side, what is it that you can do to stop malware, to stop the execution of shellcode? As a programmer, one of the things that you can do is you can avoid the use of what's termed dangerous functions. So string copy is just one. There are many, and of course each programming language is going to have its own set, but that's something where secure coding techniques come into play, and so all programmers need to adhere to those. Above and beyond that, AV scanners basically, if they're at all up to snuff, they've got signatures to recognize a lot of the well-known payloads. So a lot of the stuff that you saw in the exploit-db, a lot of those are probably already well known by most of the AV scanners. A lot of the payloads that are created in Metasploit are well known. So just realize that that's, of course, there's always people out there creating new shellcode, so that has to be added, but a lot of those things are pretty well known. Also, there's a dynamic disassembler IDS, or intrusion detection system. And what it does is it, as executables are flowing in the network traffic, it actually disassembles them and looks for shellcode. So pretty resource intensive, but I guess if you need that level of confidence, that could certainly be a countermeasure to be used. Now my last slide is basically showing you all the references that I've used. I certainly couldn't come up with all this material by myself. I definitely enjoyed having a lot of these references to learn from as well. So I hope that you've learned something from this talk.